Crowley, Community Safety Officer, Mooney Valley City Council. If you want to know anything about the people who live in those folks down there, Pecha is your man. The role of local government in preventing violence in the community.
Make it go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, talking about violence is never going to be fun, is it? I was walking past the gym yesterday and I saw a sign outside that said, today's problems come from yesterday's decisions, and I expect that was to do with the donut you shouldn't have eaten or something like that, but it sort of is partly what I want to talk to you about today. Mooney Valley doesn't actually have a high incidence of violence, but any incidence of violence is a problem and needs to be addressed. But where we're focused is trying to work out what we do to affect the determinants of violence, and indeed most of the community safety work we do, the challenge is to find out where we make a difference, what's the role that local government can play. So the question there, these are headlines off lots of current papers. Do we live in a culture of violence? The media would make us think we do. Statistics, most recent police statistics show that yes, there are certain areas of violence where things are increasing, but it's also true that some of that might be due to be reporting rather. You might have noticed just since PSOs have gone on railway stations, there seems to be more violence on railway stations, which of course isn't the case. When we think about violence and where it happens, it's important to recognise it happens in all sorts of settings too. It's not just in nighttime districts, it's in workplaces, it's in schools, it's in homes in particular. In fact, homes are our most dangerous place, even though that's where most people feel most safe. And in terms of its impacts, they are enormous. It impacts families, neighbourhoods, it has a health impact. As you can see from the green box, just domestic violence alone, the estimated annual cost is $13.6 billion. So it certainly is something that we should be attempting to change. And so the World Health Organization sort of says that if you're going to address violence, you need a shared agenda, you need to be working with partnerships, you have a focus on prevention, basic programs on evidence, and find out what works in other areas and try and apply that and evaluate. And that transfers through, so I've got too many pages to look at myself, to the public health model. Also, World Health says, okay, define the problem, identify the risk and protective factors, develop your interventions and evaluate those, and then implement. And away you go. So there's good models there if we know how to use them. The contextual factors for violence, socioeconomic status, social dislocation, geographic isolation, criminal history, recurrence or abuse of violence, mental health, patterns of substance abuse and abuse in the general community, age groups and population groups of interest such as children and youth, and issues of gender. And I've imposed the City Hall and the council meeting on top of it to say that those are all contextual areas that council's programs can have an impact upon. Which page am I up to now? And so, hang on, now I'm ahead of the slides, that's fantastic. Yeah, so local government is a key player in community-based crime prevention because we do a range of things. We manage public space, we influence building design, we provide community recreational services, we develop policies that affect local business, and we develop and implement crime prevention initiatives with other partners and NGOs. Still losing my pages. And well-designed environment, well, Richard's already touched on this, but we can do a lot in terms of improving natural surveillance, managing and accessing traffic and movement through particular places, and helping issues of territoriality, defining spaces, entry permissions, those sorts of things. Physical maintenance of spaces, that's the graffiti and the boxes, making sure that places look welcoming, and order maintenance, so cleaning up after graffiti or cleaning up syringes, or all these things have an effect on the context of violence. And we can't talk about violence without addressing family violence. I apologise for these images in a way, they're quite confronting. They're off that website called hurtwords.com, which is a fantastic depiction of how violence affects people. So in relation to family violence, the local government partnership in 2012 identified 6 specific ways that local government and advance gender equity as a predetermining factor in violence. And one of those was through infrastructure. Make sure infrastructure is well planned and designed and accessible and relevant and welcoming to everybody. The slides again. Land use planning and design. Once again, we've touched on this, so much of this interconnects. The design of spaces and places will prescribe and impact the way that they are used, and understanding and accommodating the different ways that men and women use spaces has an important effect on catering for all users and advancing gender equity. Women in leadership. Promoting women in leadership. This is another area where it's believed there's a big opportunity for local government to make advances. And I work for a council that's got an entirely male directorate, so we should be practicing what we preach. And indeed, if municipalities are like ours, we are not only the council, we are also the largest employer in the municipality with nearly 1,000 staff members. So we have a great opportunity to practically address the solution of unequal numbers of employment, but also looking at promoting women into roles that aren't traditionally seen as women's work roles. Sport and recreation, it's pretty evident to everybody that local government maintains and manages a lot of sports facilities, but they're quite often very prescriptive for male use. And so once again, there's a big opportunity for women's sports and women's activities and women's roles in sport to be promoted. And finally, this access to services, so making sure that the services provided across government are suitable for people of all gender and possibly work to address some of the inequality that comes in association with certain types of gender. And this is from a report which was written sometime in the 90s, but I love the heading, "We're Not Batman," and it very much describes the role that community safety people sometimes can find themselves in, being called about every single problem, when in actual fact what we should be doing is focusing on the determining factors, the things where we can make a difference, where we can deal with yesterday's donut by making the right decisions that will affect tomorrow. So there it is. And I didn't hear anybody.
Thank you.
Questions for Pecha?
Peter, as a director of the Multicultural Communications Consultancy,
Yes.
we work with the Victorian Government doing domestic violence campaigns. What does your council provide and do in terms of targeting people from a non-English speaking background within the city of Mooney Valley?
Well, we actually have, thank you, it's almost like computing into that question. We've got quite a lot of different programs and activities that are specifically targeting domestic violence, but we also have two housing estate communities which have vastly diverse populations, and in each of those we have a council-funded project that's specifically about assisting non-English speaking communities, new migrant communities, refugee communities to understand the issue, to understand the services that are available and to promote those services. We operate those in conjunction with health services and with legal services. So Project 360 at Flemington, 360 is the number of domestic violence call-outs to police in 6 months at Flemington, a couple of days. Safe from Harm, Wingate are both those sorts of projects. They're immensely difficult projects to prosecute because you advertise anything with the word family violence in the heading and no one will come along, you know. So we have to pitch it all as being about safe families, safe communities, that sort of stuff. And we've used some novel interventions. We've worked with Deakin University to help the development of that anti-violence performance-based initiative called You the Man, which has worked in America for years and years, and it's now been written up for Australia. And that went extremely well in a whole community youth setting where, you know, an actor sort of runs out different scenarios and it's mainly about bystander support, not about the actual issue of violence. And then you promote a discussion with that, which went probably better there than it's been anywhere in its whole pilot season across Victoria. So we are attempting to crack that very difficult nut.
Glad I asked the question.
Yeah, well, you probably regret that I had too much to say.
Any other questions?
Oh, took me a while.
The oil.